Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julissa Gonzalez. I work in marketing and business development here at ExpandIT, and we also have Michael Ferbata, who is a field service product expert and software developer. Today, we will be discussing how the ExpandIT solution works for service organizations, and more specifically, how approval workflows function in the ExpandIT Field Service software. So just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording today's session, and everyone who registered will get an email with a link to the on-demand version within the next few days. This session will run for around 45 minutes, which includes time for Q&A. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on your Ring Central console so we can address them towards the end. And if for some reason we don't have time to address all of your questions in today's live event, please be assured that we will follow up with you directly following the webinar. So the agenda is as follows. We'll look at the objectives for the webinar. Next, we'll discuss a little bit about ExpandIT. Michael will then take it over and get into the demo. And we've also allocated some time for Q&A at the end. We'll finish off with next steps and additional resources you may use. So what is the main objective of the webinar? The main objective of the webinar is to provide educational training on how approval workflows function in the ExpandIT Field Service software. And before we get started, a little bit about ExpandIT. So ExpandIT was founded in 1998, so we have more than 20 years of experience as a Microsoft independent software vendor. And we have more than 60 team members in Europe and North America. We have a worldwide partner network and a standard integration to all versions of Microsoft Dynamics 365, Business Central, Finance, and Supply Chain Management. We empower your service and installation staff with information they need to delight and serve your customers. And we also have local teams for sales, support, and service delivery. So during the training, Michael will discuss how to easily filter the data relevant to when approving, time approvals, additions, modifications, and mobile user notifications of justifications, detailed order approvals allowing for product usage updates, comment review and report review, and approvals external from the ERP allowing for immediately postable data for billing. And now we'll hand it off to Michael to get started with the demo.
Good afternoon. So we're going to take a look at the ExpandIT approval process. I'm going to switch over to that now. So in the other partner series, we've covered items such as the planning board. We've covered the mobile client. We've covered how orders and work orders are created, how that data is sent out, and how that data is retrieved. The approvals is really the last step that's available in the workflow process to send data back into the ERP system. The approvals allows for a manager, one or more managers, to approve data external of the ERP system before it ever gets sent in. So this benefits your system for several different reasons. One of them being that you can send data back into your ERP system and know that it's ready for billing. One of them because you know that you can be sure that it's been viewed by the people closest to the technicians who have a pulse on the work that should have been done, as opposed to, say, a back-end office biller. So in different workflows, it would be different people. Some examples is a planner, somebody who manages a district or a region or a division may review time, or you may have somebody separate who reviews the times and plans the work. And our system handles these different scenarios. The login for the approver is through the administrative portal, which we saw when we looked at the planning board. And on the left-hand side, that approver will have the ability to get to the approvals section. So simply they'll be able to come here, click on approvals and move into that section. This is where we're going to focus the rest of the demo, is within the approvals and what approvals is. So there are different types of approvals within our approval section. We can approve hours or we can approve orders. We can approve hours on orders. There's no requirement to do hours separately. However, what we found is many customers have their user base entering their time through our system strictly as a timesheet. And they may be more worried about getting hours approved every day than worrying about hours being approved through orders. A lot of times they want to separate the two. Yes, they want to track the hours against the orders. However, they really want to track materials and those types of those items, maybe other resources such as hand trucks or other types of billable resources other than people, and approve those through orders. And we're going to take a look at that. But you could do everything through orders, or you could do just some things through orders, and we'll talk about that when we get to orders. However, hours is really the premise of utilizing and looking at time entered by mobile clients, strictly because you are looking at it to essentially determine their time card. It would be the equivalent of looking at someone's posted time card as they walk in throughout the week and punch it in a time clock. So while looking in here, the very first thing you're going to notice is the filtering. So you can see here the first thing we do is filter by date, and today's date is selected, but I can click on that and I can select all kinds of different filters. And I can set a custom filter if need be. I'm going to leave it at today. I can select to look at any given specific employee. So if I'm only worried about employee X, then I could look at that employee and I could see where they're at. So you could use this not just for approvals, but you could use it for review of time or review of employees' time spent now or in the past. So it's not necessarily that you would have to only use this to come in to approve, but you can do filter by an employee. You can filter by the person responsible. And if you remember from prior webinars when we were looking at how we schedule work and how work orders are created, one of the things we can do on a work order is identify who the responsible party is. So within an organization, a lot of times you'll see your divisional or your regional person is actually the person responsible, but that's not the technician out on the job. The person responsible most likely is the person who has to approve the work out at the sites. So it's essentially the concept of a manager. So if the managers are set on the work orders, then the manager could also come in here and simply filter for only things that he thinks he's responsible for. Now, we're going to talk about pre-filtering this data ahead of time in a minute, but that is the premise that he could select his own or possibly others. We can look for work order hours, or I should say, we can look for hours, not work orders, hours of a specific work type. So if I'm looking for people who have logged overtime or double overtime, I simply can come in and look for them based off of this. And the work types are derived from your ERP system. So it's whatever you have in place. You may not have an overtime or a double overtime. You may not have a full working day as we do. You may just have a work hour. So again, these are derived from the ERP system, but it does allow you to filter down. And lastly, it will allow you to filter by a specific order or project. You may be trying to figure out last minute, get the time pushed into your ERP system to do some calculations on project costing. And you may be, or project or job costing, and you may be looking at trying to figure out where you're at for a specific day. So you may only approve hours for a specific project ahead of time, trying to get that in immediately. And lastly, we have different concepts of the status of time. We have approved, which is simply time that has already been approved, and we'll take a look at that. We have deleted. We're going to look at how you could delete timelines. And then we have what's called ongoing. And ongoing is the time that is actually occurring right now against an order. So a mobile client is logging that time. You may or may not want to see the ongoing. You could utilize this to see if somebody is spending more time on a project. But you also could see that to the planning board by seeing what projects they're working on. So this kind of gives you an idea of also reviewing time from the week. Somebody might not have clocked out of a job. And so maybe they have ongoing time, even though they've been off for 3 days. You would see that they have ongoing time. So once you've set your filters, and we're going to go with really no filters other than the standard, you can come and apply them. And what you're going to see down below is what is available for approval. So individually, for each resource that you have out in the field, you are going to see an entry here. So first thing you see is a count, and you'll see 4. That means that Mr. Melendez has 4 lines available. And those 4 lines, total of 5.51 work hours. So, and you'll see here under this, if you have time under multiple work types, then you will see the totals broken apart by work types. So what makes up that? Well, you can click on this and actually see the individual lines. The lines will be broken apart by day. So if you select, say, a week, underneath Mr. Melendez, you will have multiple days showing broken apart, and then within those days, what they worked on. You can see, I can see what project or order they worked on. You can see the date that it was submitted for, a quantity, the work type. I can see if there was a task involved through our system. If you remember on the mobile client, you have a project and a task. It's that's true whether it's a project or job, service order, or what they're working on, the service order. So the task they worked against, the work type is modifiable here. A description, and we show 2 pieces of description. We show where was the work done, and then we show what is the description of the line. Now this is configurable. We can either make the description the work type description, which it is currently configured to be, or we can make it the person's, the resources description. So in this case, it would read Mr. Melendez's name here instead of work hour. From there, you're going to see 2 more columns, column unit price and unit cost. In general, these are normally not used within the hours or individuals' approvals. So the reason that I say that is because our goal is not to calculate the correct unit cost or the correct unit price. Our goal is to not even display it, as you can see here. But we will display it if it comes from the ERP system. However, ERP systems have different calculation methods, and we will not recalculate based off of the calculation method from the ERP. However, you can override it. So you could come in here and override what the cost or price would be. So you as a user could say, I want to override, yes, there is a cost, but maybe the price is nothing. Maybe we're zeroing out some price to an end customer. So the reason the fields are here are to give you the ability to update the ERP system with additional information, even though you might not have the original or what should be the end calculated price or cost. And then that price adds out to the total cost. After that, you're going to notice that we have 3 additional buttons. Info. And this button really is just a mouse over it. It gives us more information about the work order that's there. We can copy this line. We're going to take a look at that here in a minute. And we can delete this line, which we touched on earlier. We're going to also do. Lastly, there's a checkbox on the right. It's under the Approve column, and I can select this checkbox to approve it. So there's a lot of detail that I can see, and you'll notice there's a lot of modifiable fields. So yes, I can change the date of this. Maybe this user clocked this time on the 15th today, but he actually worked yesterday, and he made a mistake and didn't correctly on the mobile client say that he was starting the work yesterday. Well, I as an approver can actually come in here and say, this was actually yesterday. Change it to yesterday's date simply by clicking on it and adjusting the date. Or they might call up and say, I didn't hit start work, so I need to adjust it. And I need to go, I've actually been working for 3 hours on this job. When I finished this job, I worked for 3 hours. So I can come in here and adjust this to 3. Or I might adjust what it is. It may not be on a specific task on this work order. And this work order only has 1 task. But I could select a different task and change what I worked against. Maybe he selected the wrong thing when he was working. I also could change the work type. Maybe it's not a work day, work hour. Maybe it's a full working day. And I should just change this to 1. You may have a project that bills in full or say even half days, and people identify as 1 work day or 1 half day, and there's no in between. So every company performs that request a little bit differently. We talked about the pricing, which I could modify as well. And then once I make a modification, that's why I hadn't made it yet. So let's make a modification here. You'll notice it turns red and gives me a red box underneath for a justification. So I, as an approver, have to justify why I am changing this. So I have to succinctly say, user missed his clock in. So I've modified this to 3, and I've identified that the user missed his clock in. So I can fix this before the ERP is even ever told about it. And so when the ERP gets told about it, ERP gets told 3. So what you don't end up having is you don't end up having an invoice that says 1.17, and then another one that comes back and says 1.83. You just have one that says an invoice that says 3 for this user. You'll notice on the right-hand side then, down below, I apologize, there's a save button. So once I've modified this, I can hit save. And it's no longer red, and the justification is now saved and in place. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and approve these 2 lines. And again, you'll notice that part of it turns red because it's not saved. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. And you'll notice they disappear. So why have they disappeared? Well, of course, because they're approved. And our filter does not include the approved lines. However, simply we can come here, hit apply filters, it'll reset our data, and now you can actually see the additional information. You can see they are approved, who they were approved, and when they were approved. You can also see the modification and the justification that was made in the past. So let's go back and look at just the regular lines. They're still available. So let's say that we're still going through the day and trying to get through the approval for this user. So this user will tell you, well, these are true. I worked these, but I also worked, let's say 1 hour of double time. But it's not here. Well, you as a manager could come here and say copy line, and you will get an additional line here. You then could say 1, and it's already been preset to the same project, to the same task. And then you could select the correct work type. And we don't have a double time, but maybe I could say he also worked 1 additional full working day. User miss locked, right? And I can go ahead and say save. And now I've gone ahead and created an additional line with 1 full working day with user miss clock. So I, as an approver, was able to come in here. I was able to add time. I was able to modify time. I was able to delete time. So as a user, I can say, this is incorrect. He didn't work 1 full working day and then also 4.17 hours on here. This is the wrong project and task. I think he was thinking about another day. Let's go ahead and delete this. And now that's gone. So can we see that? For historical reasons, of course, we can apply filters. We can see that that was created and deleted in the past just by doing that. So we're going to go ahead and go back to time. Some other pieces about the time we touched on. we're going to take a look at ongoing. So you're going to notice we also have another user down below, Mike Frabata, and Mike Frabata has this triangle over on the right, not yet finalized. And what that means is this user is displaying ongoing time. This triangle is to identify this user has ongoing time. So even without expanding out the users, which it is going to identify them on the individual line levels. So if you are looking, say, on Friday afternoon to see everyone's time is in the system and no time is left hanging out, you simply could pull this up and see if anybody has any ongoing time available. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that nobody missed entering time, but what that means is that nothing is left open at this moment. So what you can see down below is you can see what they're working on, and you can see all the details, but you'll notice I cannot modify it, and it's yellow. And so I can, again, the only button I have is to view details. So I can see this, but I can't modify it, and it won't become modifiable until that mobile order is finalized, and at which point in time it will become available here. Lastly, you'll notice I have 40 have no registrations. This is a really quick and easy way to be able to view what users have no time for the time period that you are filtering that match the filters that you're asking about. So does it mean that Luke has no time entry on this date? No, it doesn't. It means that he has none that is either not approved or not deleted. So I could do approved and refilter, and I may end up coming up with time. So as an example, Mike Frabata shows here with ongoing time. However, if I remove that, it'll end up in this listing. So you can filter down to see the people and to see who does or doesn't have time. It's a good way at the end of the day to do that. Lastly, we talked about copying a line. So this user called and I deleted the line because it was actually not for the project that was discussed. Simply, now he says, but it was for this other project. And you know, I totally forgot to even clock that project's time. It didn't happen. I've already finished it. So how can you as an approver who gets that call, get that time in so that it goes into the ERP system with the order? Well, I can actually come here and say add line. So I can come in here, I can select the order or project that it was against. So I'm just going to select this one. And I could select the task if there was one that it's against. Like that. I'm going to do this. Oh, I thought that was the bottom one. So I can select the task that it goes against. I can select the resource. So again, it's Mr. Melendez. And I can select what it was. So he says, you know, I didn't do it, but I worked 4 hours that date, and I can add that. And it's now actually here added as work that can be created. So I, as a approver, was able to add time specifically for an order, for a user, as opposed to just copying a line that existed. Okay. So we've touched on time approval, and we've touched on what time approval looks like. What we're going to now say is, well, what does that time approval look like to the mobile user, person out in the field, person who has done the work? So we've already shown the mobile client in the past, and we've reviewed the basic functions of it. So if you have questions about that, I suggest that you contact Julissa or look at our other mobile client webinars that we've done. But we're going to switch over and we're going to take a look. And one of the things you're going to notice right away is two things. I have this mail icon in the top right of my mobile client. It just means that I have a message, if you remember from the other webinars. I, as a user, can always review my week timesheet. So I simply can come in here and review it. And what I can see is, I can see hours in different ways. Hours by work type, I can see I've only had one work type, work hour, and I've logged 7 hours and 20 minutes in this time frame. I have hours by job. Well, I've only worked on these 2 work orders, and all of my time is against those work orders at that amount of time. Down below, I can see it by day, and I've only clocked time on Thursday, and I've only clocked these work orders for these amounts of time. You'll notice these have been approved. So this was approved. However, this now says 3 hours. Well, how would I have known that that time had been changed? If you remember, originally it wasn't 3 hours. So how did this time come about to now be 3 hours? Well, the mail icon meant I had a message. And so once I'm done approving through here, and here you can see also, the piece is how many hours are still pending approval. So we can see that down below, 4 hours and 10 minutes have been unapproved. We can see that up above. So how do I know why anything may have changed? Well, I've been notified of it, and I simply can get to my messages for my notifications. You'll actually see the time registrations, everything that I changed has been notified to me. So I can see that a quantity was changed from minute 10 to 3 hours. So from 1.17 hours to 3 hours, with a justification of the user missed clock in. So I called back, my manager adjusted it, I will get a notification on my mobile client, and I would see what was adjusted and what they said why. You can see up above, it was also changed from 10 minutes to 1 hour with another missed clock. You'll also see that it was miscreated. So I deleted a line. And I deleted another line. So this was the copied line I deleted, and this was the add line I deleted. So a line was added to this, and then it was deleted. This line was deleted. So as a mobile user, I'm getting notified that time is being modified behind the scenes. It would be as if a manager walked up and took my time card and tossed out my clock in and wrote 15 minutes earlier because I forgot the clock in. However, you need the paper trail. You need that initial who changed this, when did they change it, and why did they change it. And there's more detail within the actual message itself. You can see who modified it also. So we're going to go back to the approvals, and we've touched a lot on hours approvals and why you would do hours approvals and how you do hours approvals. So let's take a look at orders approvals. So orders approvals has a lot of the same functionality in terms of filtering. So we can filter, we can search on things, we can look at things that only need approval. We can look at it, we can look for maybe a specific order. This filtering has more of a generic search box. Maybe I'm looking for a specific comment or a specific work address or a order number. I can look by department, which again is a categorization. So I, as an approver, normally, if you're doing approval of orders, would be done by somebody who plans or approves for a specific one or more departments. And you can select one or more at a time. So I can look for, say, Canada and US and the development at the same exact time and find orders that fall within that realm. Just as for hours, again, I could look at only orders that would have had myself marked as the responsible party, and I could work with them. And lastly, I could look at order statuses. I may look, normally you're looking to approve things with an overall order status of awaiting approval. So need approval down below here is different. So you can actually view orders that are in process through here. Of course, if you do that, you'd have to remove awaiting approval because that's not the status they're in. They may be in a status of started. And you may want to look at an order's details as an approver for a status started. If you are an approver who doesn't have access to the planning board, even in a read-only fashion, then this may be the route you go. But generally, you'd look to do this more more up-to-date looking at things that are ongoing through the planning board and through the edit order screen. However, it does give you the capability of going back in time and looking at old approved orders and then just finding any order. Maybe you think something has been approved. Maybe it's sitting out there as never having been closed by the mobile client. So you as an approver would be able to see that, find that, and pull those in. So we're going to go ahead and just look at things that need approvals. And we're going to sort by date, and we're going to look at things from today. We are going to look at this order specifically, so you can see some order details, and you can see that it's awaiting approval. So we can click on this, and we're going to look at the screen. So this is the general detail screen, and it gives us a lot of information about what it is that I have the ability to see from the order and change and approve. So it gives me some basic information about the work order, such as the project information, the specific order information. It's going to give me the header level comments, as you can see here, and it's going to give me the invoice comments that were entered from the mobile client. Down below, it's going to give me a summary view of materials and time, and we're going to take a look at that here in a minute. Again, you can approve time through here, or you can do it through the other hours approval. So first off, across the top, I would be able to see any file that was attached to the order. This order has no files attached. The next order we look at will. I'm able to see what tasks were completed. So this user completed one task and it's not approved. I'm able to see reports that were completed in the field by the mobile user. So this mobile user created this summary report in the field, and I can either click on it to view it, or I can click here to edit it. So even though the report has been finished in the field, submitted by the person in the field, I can click here to edit that report. And it will pull up the report that was created. And there's only two fields editable on this report, the customer name or the customer signature. So it may not have been Jane Doe, might be Jane Donahue. So maybe it was incorrectly put in and we wanted to fix it before. And maybe Jane called and wants a copy of this report. I also can come in here, put her email address in, and click save. Once I've done that, now those updates are saved as part of that report, and that's what gets sent out to the customer, whoever's email address has been sponsored here. So we're able to see reports. We're also able to see some details at the header level. We're able to see what people have written. And most importantly, and the biggest question we get a lot is on the mobile client, we have an area where we say, do you want to allow your technicians to enter something that may show back up on the invoice, printed? A lot of companies say, well, I never want that because who knows what they'll write. But of course, if you're using approvals give you the capability of reviewing what gets sent back and determining whether or not anything should get sent back. Now, you can turn it off on the mobile client. That was discussed on the mobile webinar. However, if you left it on, you, as a company, you should not have to worry past this point. So in other words, whatever gets sent back to that ERP system should be able to get printed and posted and sent off right away. So this is the concept of this approvals, is the last step to the ERP. So the approver can review this item. They can come in here and modify it as they see fit. And then once they've modified it, they can hit save. Down below, we can see some additional details. And you'll see here, the details are some items. And just like timelines, item lines can be modified, the date that the item will be consumed, the quantity of items that should be consumed, what it should be consumed against, the warehouse or inventory location that was selected for the consumption. And again, the unit price and cost. So the system's not attempting to calculate what the ERP system may determine is the unit price or cost through. However, you have the ability to modify them if you needed to. Say you offered the customer on site a discount you could modify those costs here and translate them into your ERP system. You can delete a line and you can approve a line. You'll notice there's no copy. And that's because in general, we haven't seen a need to copy item lines. However, there still is an add, just as there was in time. But the add from here is not just for hours, for people. The add here is either for a product or a person. So it's either one. So you can add hours for a resource or add a product directly from this location. And as you select that, the tasks and the options of configuring that to be added change. But you can add them directly from here. You also have some ability to filter on larger jobs. You'll see lots of items come in. And so you might only want to be looking at products and not mixed with resources. You might only want to look at things that need approval and ignoring things that have already been approved. So if we actually hit this and hit apply, you'll notice that we see the already approved and deleted timelines that came through the system. So there is the ability to see more information here if I need to. But normally what we're trying to present is what actually needs approved at any given moment. So I can individually approve these lines, or I can approve everything, which includes approval overall of the order. So I can approve a line. Maybe I leave a line out while I'm contacting the person in the field. However, to approve the order as a whole, in the end, I have to approve everything to tell the ERP system about it. Okay. So we've touched on hours approval, and we've touched on orders approval, where you would use them separately and why you would use them separately. Lastly, we were going to look at one more order. And this is an order just to see the hours approval and the order and the time approval is capable within the same order. And so you'll see here, yes, I saw these in the hours approval, and maybe that's as a business process, a company, we always do hours and the hours approval. But you can see that you could do everything through here with the same functionality. I can delete lines and add those lines. You'll also notice that this order had files attached, which I can actually view simply by clicking on them. And here's a picture of a broken pipe from this order. So maybe I'm trying to determine if part of this order should be comped, or maybe I need to change the comment out to mobile to the invoice if there is a comment to invoice. So a lot of pieces that I can change at this point in time. Once I've done that, I simply can say approve everything. And that order will no longer be available within my, right here, 8.6 is no longer here. And I can always go back and view that order through this process and see that it's been pushed. So this is the concepts of our approvals process. Again, the primary goal of the process is to allow your approvers or your customers' approvers to review data through our system before it ever goes to the ERP system. The biggest benefit of that is then we can show historical tracking back to the mobile client, which is very important for us. If the changes are made afterwards within the ERP system, we won't know about those, because we're not going to track once we've handed data back to the ERP system. If somebody modifies that for an order, well, that order is already completed, so we're not tracking it anymore. We won't see those future changes before posting, and we certainly won't see them if it's posted, because we don't pull, normally for most installations, don't pull posted documents. So I apologize. I believe I dropped off. Uh, the is to keep a history for us um, in what we can show to the mobile client and keep them up to date. And a lot of times there's regulatory requirements to do that. Okay, so at that point, we're going to move back and we'll move into the Q&A session. For anybody who's on that had questions, we're going to touch on those.
Thank you, Michael. So here I have one question, and it is, how long is historical data available through approvals on the BAS?
Okay, so we did touch on the fact that historical data is available through us, and really how long is it available depends on how long that data is kept. So as a company, it's held indefinitely until it's purged. So it's available forever unless it's purged for normally space requirements. So larger companies might have, you know, thousands of lines, tens of thousands of lines of time every week. And so what we see is a lot of times those companies will determine to clear those tables every year or every couple of years. And there's regulatory concerns if they don't have an additional way of keeping track of that data. It may be every 7 years. And so it's really available as long as the person with the installation wants to keep it. And it's available as long as there is disk space to keep it. But there is no requirement to remove it, and there is no limitation to how far back it can be held.
Great, thank you. So now we'll move on to additional resources that are available for your use. So if you'd like to work together, we do have partner-specific information that we can provide, such as a sell sheet and other collateral material that's helpful when you're speaking to your customers. And as Michael mentioned, we do have other educational videos that touch upon the different products that we have. And we will have other webinars in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for those ones as well. And again, if you do have any additional questions about the material that was covered or have any other questions on how we can work together, feel free to contact me. My contact information is being displayed. And with that said, thank you everyone for coming out and have a great day.